this time, life was born with a tiny cell that could reproduce. It was this capacity to reproduce that made it living, life, which allowed it to adapt and to diversify over the years. 1.5 billion years ago, sexual reproduction was invented. 1 billion years later, some living creatures had many cells. 430 million years ago, fish emerged from the water, and less than 380 million years ago, our ancestors and the ancestors of the salamanders were still the same. From then on, each has made its way to become what it is now. On the one hand, a poorly adapted mammal who compensates for inferiority through technology and unusually aggressive behavior. And on the other, an amphibian which must adapt as well as it can to everything that the technology and aggression of mankind cause. Reproduction. This is what counts in the renewal of the species and so its evolution. Males and females each transmit by chance half of their genetic heritage. The meeting of the female and male genes gives birth to new individuals who are similar but slightly different. For the salamander, this important meeting generally takes place at the start of autumn. In this season, cool temperatures and damp conditions make them come out in search of a partner. But alas, these migrations are badly disturbed by our own movements. It took 2 autumns to film this sequence. In the first year, not a single drop of rain fell between the last summer storm on the 6th of August and the first snows of winter on the 26th of November. You can talk about exceptionally dry conditions until the exceptional becomes the norm. Hard times for salamanders. At last, it is sufficiently cool and damp to allow the salamanders to come out, and if their paths don't cross ours, to be able to reproduce. They climb on each other, but there is no copulation with salamanders. Fertilization is external. The male places himself on the female and strokes her chin by moving his head from right to left. Then, deposits sperm on leaves in a small gelatinous pile that scientists have called, in their usual poetic and original way, a spermatophore. Literally, a spermatozoa door. The female inserts this gelatinous mass in her oviduct. An oviduct is an egg cavity, named with the same poetry. Fertilization, the meeting between the spermatozoa of the male and the egg of the female, will happen later, well after the partners have separated. This kind of later fertilization is an exception among the amphibians, who are more likely to do everything at once. Toads, for example, expel millions of eggs in an instant from the female, and they are immediately fertilized by the male. The salamander is a slowness expert. It places its bets on durability and quality rather than quantity. A worm nibbled from time to time, short periods of activity. The life of salamanders stretches out slowly. But they can live in this way for many decades, compared to the 5 or 6 springs of their cousins, the toads. Evolution allows adaptation, the chances of reproduction sometimes offering new abilities. The new individual is therefore better equipped to survive and thus better able to reproduce. This is the sorting of natural selection. And so, through the millennia, the salamander has acquired capacities essential to its survival. This is a cold-blooded animal which doesn't regulate its body temperature. So, to prevent frost imprisoning its body and perforating its cells during hard winters, the salamander secretes an antifreeze which allows it to stand up to temperatures as low as -10 degrees Celsius. Its skin secretes an antibiotic and antifungal mucus which protects it from external attacks. Antifreeze, antibiotic, and antifungal, so many incredible adaptations which attract the interest of researchers. So much hypothetical promise to one day help us out of the process of implacable natural selection. In the laboratories of the Lausanne Federal Polytechnic, it is in the salamander's past that an interest for mankind's future is being sought. You have to have permission to enter here, and the animals studied are special.
So in my lab, we're very much interested in animal locomotion. And for a long time, we have now studied the salamander, which is a key animal from a locomotion point of view. By modeling it, we have a bit access to our ancestor, at least the ancestor of all tetrapods, of mammals, of birds, of humans, all came somehow from a salamander-like ancestor.
We ordered also a stretchable like pyjama. So
for
like,
protection below.
Yeah, exactly. We put the pyjama first. Again, all poles here.
And did we get the suit now for swimming?
Next week.
Next week, okay, yeah. That would be cool.
Salamanders is like this big. So we took X-ray video of this animal while it was walking and swimming. And we scale up this skeleton. And then we create this robot. So basically it's a real replica of the real animal. And we make it walk at the correct speed and also swim in order to validate this methodology we use in order to design robots out of animals.
Our scientific interest is basically to use biology to build better robots, then use the robots to then study biology.
So the main purpose of what we do is really scientific knowledge. And this is very important from also medicine point of view. Understanding the spinal cord circuits in animals, including in humans, is very important because in the future it can help to, for instance, restore locomotion paraplegic patient. If we understand how the spinal cord works, we can maybe stimulate electrically or help a paraplegic person to walk again. And now, indeed, when you take inspiration from biology to apply it to robotics, you can also go beyond biology and do things that animals cannot yet do or are not doing.
Allowing paralyzed people to walk again, to go beyond the capacities of living. An astonishing promise hidden in the approach of the salamander. A human being with imagination sees a number of promises in this little black and yellow amphibian, and this has been happening for a very long time. In antiquity, the salamander symbolized the element of fire. For alchemists, it was the living incarnation of sulfur, the final step of mercury heated for years before it transformed into the philosopher's stone. In the Middle Ages, it was thought that the salamander could resist fire, that it could poison spring water, and even that it was immortal. By closely observing the fire salamander, explanations for the ancient beliefs can be found. The salamander is covered in yellow marks which evoke flames. In case of danger, it secretes a toxic liquid that burns anything that tries to devour it. Also, since it hibernates in logs, it's easy to imagine it coming out of a burning log before the wonder-struck eyes of people in the Middle Ages. Most of all, it has this unbelievable ability to regrow severed limbs. But there, where we, modern people, look for rational explanations, in the past, people saw in all these clues an expression of the true nature of this animal, which was hidden beyond the visible. If you wish to see this true nature of salamanders, the most certain way is without any doubt to go to Chambord. In his castle, Francois I had its emblem sculpted everywhere, even though at first sight these water-spouting dragons only resemble salamanders vaguely.
At the beginning, when I widened my knowledge of this animal, I really had a 2019 mind. That's to say, I was looking for a single meaning. And since, progressively, studying this animal forced me to think as if it was 500 years ago, and to make an effort to think by stratification, by allegory, and through metaphor. So I'm deeply indebted to this animal, a real light and illumination in the sense of intelligence. There's a lot of intelligence in these emblems.
In the Middle Ages, it was believed that living creatures were created by God, who gifted them with characteristics hidden behind their appearance. Observations by sages could only confirm these divine characteristics, which are found symbolized in each of the 837 salamanders sculpted at Chambord.
Here there are 200 sculptures of salamanders, and not one is the same. So this is a masterwork. It was the best workers in the kingdom that sculpted this. There are 2 sites like this in Europe, Chambord and St. Peter's in Rome.
By decrypting each of these sculptures, Francois Parot has retraced the road to understand what people in the Middle Ages saw behind the salamander.
So the salamander, what was known about it in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, at the start of the Renaissance? Little. It was supposed that it had a quite exceptional power to regenerate. I think this was observed in nature, that this animal could have 6 fingers and maybe that parts of severed fingers regrew. It was supposed to have a special kind of sexuality, that it was quite simply asexual and that it could be born simply from the soil, from silt. It's not difficult then to associate the salamander to the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary. So we can see the counterpart here. In the same way that it could regenerate its body in a spectacular fashion. So immortality isn't far off. Hence the symbol of Christ.